Hi Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Well, I know your mom called me a little earlier and was asking me if I could talk to you a little bit. I know you've been experiencing some anger and stuff. We've talked a couple times before about that. And your mom come in, she went ahead and signed some consent, so she does know that we're here, talking about this. So tell me a little bit about what's been going on.
I just can't really control myself, and I don't. I don't react well whenever things don't go my way.
Well, describe to me some things that have been going on, like some instances that have happened that you've been experiencing some of this aggressiveness or some anger.
Um, my anger happens everywhere, like in class, when no one will listen to me, or when I'm playing sports, things like that.
So you act like you're a little bit agitated now. Do you feel some of that anger or aggressiveness now?
I just don't know why I gotta be here.
Well, why do you think you have to be here? Has your mom had a conversation with
'Cause my
you?
mom made me come.
Well, okay, let's talk about some things, that can happen in this. Some positive outcomes that can actually happen for you to come and see me and us to discuss some of these things. So what are some expectations, do you think, some positive outcomes that could happen with us just talking, you actually, getting a chance to talk about some of these things?
Maybe I could control myself better, or keep everybody from getting on me.
Okay, so we're going to take a second just to talk about your anger and some things that have happened in the past. I know you probably experienced some anxiety, some emotional ups and downs whenever you get, as you say, that aggressively hostile, or that's how you described it to your mom and your dad. You feel like sometimes it gets so bad that you can't even control it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those things. How do you feel emotionally inside? Do you feel like your heart pumps a little harder? Do you start sweating? What are some things physically that happens to your body when you get that upset?
I don't know. I feel like if I don't act right then, or take control of the situation, I can't forget about it, and I can't quit thinking about it after it's over, unless I do, unless I act out, or unless I hit somebody or something.
So your anger gets so bad that you feel like you have to get physical with someone else. You have to act out your anger in a physical way. That's how bad it gets for you?
Yes.
Okay, so it controls you completely. Your emotions just take over. So let's talk about some of those things that trigger your emotion. Trigger you to just get that upset. Can you think of an instance in the last week or two that you've gotten that upset that you've physically taken it out on someone?
Kids slapped my books out of my hands, and there was a bunch of teachers around at that point, so I didn't get him at that point. So, and that's all I could think about. So later on in the day, I saw him walking down the hallway, and I hit him.
So when you say get him, what do you mean?
Get a hold of him.
So you wanted to get physical with him?
Yes.
Okay, so what triggered that was that he came up and he slapped the books out of your hand, which is not right. He shouldn't have done that. But even after that, after the situation had sort of, de-escalated, and you guys went your separate ways, you still felt fueled by what had happened, even an hour or two later. Is that right?
That's all I can think about.
Okay. And so what are the things that you did in that hour or two later?
I really don't remember. It's just all I wanted to do was to see him.
Okay, so when you did get a hold of him, did you end up getting a hold of him like you said?
Yes.
Okay, and so what happened in those moments? What are some of the emotions and the feelings that you were feeling when you seen him a little while later?
I don't know. I just went crazy.
Okay.
All I wanted to do was hit him.
Okay, and so then what happened? Did you had a physical altercation with him, and then I'm assuming teachers come and broke it up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so how did you feel after that was over?
Better.
It made you feel better?
Relieved, yeah. I just got it off my mind.
Okay, and then what happened? Did you get punished for doing that?
Yeah, I had to. I was suspended.
From school?
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
why I'm here right now.
and so as I understand, when you get suspended from school, you don't really get credit for any of the things that you're doing during that time that you're suspended. Is that right?
Yes.
So there's some other repercussions of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those things. So when you have that anxiety, that overwhelming feeling like you have to get someone back because you're that angered about a situation, whether they bring it on themselves or whether something just, you take something wrong, maybe somebody says something and it just gets your emotions heightened, and you feel like you always have to physically take it out on someone. Is that correct?
Most of the time.
Okay, and then and you have some anxiety with that, I'm sure. Is that right? So how does that anxiety make you feel in your day-to-day life?
Just like sweaty. I start breathing a little bit harder and start sweating. That's all I can think about.
And none of those feelings, I can't imagine that you enjoy feeling that feeling. Is that correct? So, and do you take anything for anxiety or depression?
No.
And have you ever seen a doctor for any of those things?
No.
Okay. And do you feel like you can go to your parents and you can talk to them? I mean, I know your mother was really forthcoming with the information that she was giving me. She had maybe you had spoken to her at length about how you're feeling about that certain situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, everyone's telling me what to do.
So let's talk a little bit about, I know you have some anxiety, and I also know, I hear some of the other teachers talk about you playing sports, and I feel like that's a great outlet for you as far as your aggressiveness. I hear sometimes that you're aggressive on the court or on the field. And so how does that make you feel when you're playing a sport? Is it kind of like used as an outlet for you?
Yeah, sports is what makes me feel good. It's what I feel like I should do. It relieves tension, and I don't have a lot of anger and anxiety when we win. When we lose, obviously do.
I noticed that you have some anxiety just sitting here. Like you sort of can't sit still. Is your anxiety, do you feel like your anxiety is increased because you're here talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that one situation. You're talking about how you had to get that boy back, or if you have situations like that happen, you can't get your mind off of it, and how it increases your anger, and then you aggressively act out. Let's talk about how we could better deal with that. So if we go back to that point in time and we realize that he knocked the books out of your hand, how do you feel like you could have dealt with that in another way, non-aggressive way? Now, I know that it might bring on a little bit of anxiety thinking that you couldn't get him back, but that relief of anxiety is what I'm most concerned with. So do you think, I'm just going to walk you through that. He knocks your books out of your hands, and you feel that tension, that anxiety on set immediately, and then you're broken up, and he walks away. What did you do immediately after that? You said you couldn't get your mind off of it. I assume that you went to other classes after that?
Yeah,
Is
I had
that
to
correct?
go to class, and I couldn't concentrate. I don't even know what we were going over that day or what we studied. I don't even know.
So you were forced to sit down in a structured sort of environment, and you weren't allowed to let some of that aggressiveness or tension go, right? No physical way of letting it go. So maybe that's the real issue. Maybe there's a way that you just need an outlet to sort of let loose, and if that's maybe taking a walk, or going to the gym class or going to the weight room, and or just even coming here and talking to me about it and sort of getting it out that way. We talked a little bit before about how sports made you feel good whenever you feel like you're achieving something, and that gives you a little bit of anxiety when you go out there on the court, but that's a way to relieve that. So that physical way that you're able to get out there and do your thing and perform at your best gives you a way to release some of that anxiety. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn this into something that maybe could be useful for you. So if we have another situation where today you go back to class and the same boy knocks the books out of your hand, right? Is there a way that you could, after it de-escalates, you could pull yourself away from that and walk away, come back, and you be okay? Do you think that might be possible?
It might be. I just don't know how. I would need some kind of outlet, some way to release my aggression.
Yes. So you see that whenever we go back and we talk about that day that happened, and you got the books knocked out of your hand, and you were suspended for 3 days. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I know your mother has told me before that you strive really hard in your academics and performing in the classroom, and so I imagine that 3 days of suspension without being able to get credit for your work probably hurt you as far as your academics. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and you had to spend some time making some other work up or doing some extra stuff to make sure that your grades weren't too low. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you would have walked away that day, right, you would have maybe had a friend that you could have gone and talked to. You could have maybe, asked the principal or asked one of your teachers if you could just go outside and take a few laps around the track, just to kind of relieve some of that. Do you think that maybe would have made you feel better?
Yeah.
Seems like sports is attributed to your decreased anxiety, a way to let that out. So let's go with a physical way that you could sort of de-escalate. One of the things I want to talk to you about is whenever you feel that sort of aggressiveness or anger, a way to kind of deal with that in the moment is breathing exercises. So I know that probably is funny, sounds funny to you, but that really, really works. It's been proven to have positive effects on people who just sort of meditate. Now, I'm not asking you to meditate or go somewhere in a corner and do something weird. I'm just asking you that in that moment, you sort of take a deep breath and you sort of breathe and try to relax yourself. That anxiety that you're feeling is so overwhelming. That anxiety is what's making you want to act out and get that aggressiveness out. So I've actually printed off a couple papers because your mom told me that you were going to stop by. So I thought maybe we could go through some of these things. So you just want to take a look at that. And you see that first set, you see that person there, is when that anxiety comes on and comes over you. Take a deep breath and you sort of to yourself, you don't necessarily have to count out loud, you just take a deep breath and you count to yourself and then you let it out, right? And that's a way to kind of get your heart rate down and kind of weed out that anxiety, okay? So when you have some free time, I want you to look over that and I want you to try that. Also, what I want you to start doing is take a notebook home with you today, and every time you feel things trigger your emotion, your trigger your anger, or your aggressiveness, I want you just to jot it down. It doesn't have to be, a lengthy sort of journal. Just, I want you to jot some of those things down. And when you de-escalate yourself, whether it be through breathing or doing some kind of physical activity, I want you to really consider writing down what really worked for you. And just jotting it down so that when we meet next week, and I do want to meet you next week, and just kind of go over some of these things, that we can go over some of these things and you can tell me, you can sort of reflect and see how that's positively impacted your life. Because I know that this aggression and this anger is causing you problems now, but it's surely going to cause you more problems in the future. So as situations come on, bigger situations sort of take hold of you, your anger is going to get more out of control. Okay, so we need to think of a way we can get a handle on it now. So think about some of the positive things that you can do. And we talked about the physical, right? Some of the physical things that sort of make you feel like you've accomplished something and give you that good euphoric feeling, meaning that you just feel really, really good. So if we do some physical things and sort of get that aggression out, then you can kind of see for yourself, reflecting from your journal entries, things that have really worked for you. We're going to walk through this. And I'm going to help you. So we're going to meet once a week. And we're going to go through some of these things, but I want you to keep a positive frame of mind. I want you to know that your behavior can be changed by just you realizing that you can deal with things differently. Okay, do you understand that?
Yep.
Okay, if you have any other problems or any other questions, you can always feel free to come to my office and talk to me, okay? Or you can even have your mom to call me, and we'll keep her informed as well, okay? So, all right, Daniel, it's been really good talking to you today.
Thank you.